Good evening, everyone. Welcome. You may have seen the topic tonight is around investment readiness. What does it take to raise investments, and what does it mean to be investment ready? But before we jump into the actual content, just a quick overview of what I want to cover today. One, give a quick summary of Open Capital Advisors. Who are we? What do we do? Why am I even qualified to be standing in front of you talking about this stuff? Second, let's talk a bit about what are your funding options, what do funders look for, and then what does the process typically look like? So those are the three things we want to cover today. So real quick, just Open Capital Advisors, I will go through these slides fairly quickly, but I think it's helpful for you to have some context about who we are. And who knows, maybe some of you see this and think we're a cool company to work for. I've got two of my colleagues here as well, Sarah and Natasha. I did not make them come. I was surprised they were here, pleasantly surprised. Thank you all for coming. So if you want to talk to them about the stuff I've covered, as well as just the company in general, great resources as well. So in short, we are a management consulting and financial advisory firm. Originally founded in Kenya. We now have 3 offices, one in Nairobi, one in Kampala, and one here in Lusaka, where the 3 of us work along with a couple of other people. And what do we do? Why do we exist? Our vision is, a sustainable African continent where our economies are driven by solutions developed by Africans for the most challenging problems that we see in Africa today. We see a continent that doesn't rely on aid, but has developed our own solutions that are sustainable and driven for long-term success. And that's what we want to help contribute to. And we do that in a couple of different ways. But to get to that, we've built a team of about, I think, 120-something people across those 3 offices and worked with about kind of 500 different engagements. And part of that work is helping businesses raise financing. You'll see up there that's about $450 million plus that we've helped our clients raise. We work across sectors, so our vision is to be able to have an effect across those different sectors. So agriculture and energy are the largest sectors we work in. That's the nature of working in sub-Saharan Africa, which is where most of our work is focused, but also a lot of work in financial services, healthcare, manufacturing, tech, and a number of others as well. And as I said, we do that. We achieve our vision in a couple of different ways. We work with businesses directly, so that's helping them with their operations, their strategy, helping them to raise financing. We work with investors, helping them to deploy capital, assess potential investments, and hopefully can bring that lens to the businesses we work with as well, where we can help them understand this is what I need to do in order to actually raise financing. And then we take that knowledge and apply it to what we call development partners. So that's USAID, Gates Foundation, the UN, et cetera, because they tend to be up here in terms of their understanding of the market, and they'll come to us to help them do market assessments, value chain studies, et cetera, and help them really understand what's actually happening in the market. Before I jump into kind of the next section, one thing I'd like to say, those of us who work in this sector have a propensity to use terms that we know and we're comfortable with, but everyone else may not. So if I say anything that you don't understand, it's not your fault, it's just that's what we naturally slip into. Please take note. If there is anything I say, raise your hand, just ask, what does that mean? Absolutely fine. I guarantee you, if you're asking, someone else in the room is wondering as well, right? So feel free to raise your hand. I'll stop briefly, define it, and then we can keep going. Can we all agree to that? Safe space, feel free to ask. Fantastic. All right, so investment readiness, what does it mean? What does it mean to actually raise financing? I think a good place to start is just understanding what does the funder universe look like, and what are the options we have in terms of capital. To your question about what's the point of raising financing? There are folks in this room, like in Java, who runs Musanga Logistics, who can tell you a bit more about the practical side of that. Umalumba, who's over at IDC and managing companies who need to scale. Really the goal is capital is your fuel, right? It's what drives you to grow. You can only grow your business as much as you're able to pour resources into it, right? Just like your body needs food, a business needs financing in order to grow and to scale. And the amount of cash you have relates to how fast you can grow. Now, sometimes you don't want to grow that fast and you need to figure out what is the right level, but most businesses aren't profitable initially, right? So they're not throwing off cash. You have to invest up front when you start a business, and you're usually losing money for a couple of years before you get to the point where the business is making enough money to cover your costs and allow you to actually be able to run the business substantially. So you need that external financing, right? When most people start, they're either funding the business themselves, or there's a saying that they'll go to friends, family, and fools to get their business started, right? So those are usually the sources that people get. You look a little bit confused at the fools part. Exactly, right? But Brad McGrath, the founder of Zona, was at TEDx the other day, and he said, as a founder, you need to be. There's a paradox because you need to be incredibly confident, and you also need to be extremely humble. Right? Because you need to you need to believe in your idea so much that, look, I think this is worthwhile and it's worth me investing everything in this, but you can't be that way in front of everyone, right? Like you need to recognize there's a lot I need to learn. And to that point, right, there are people that you need to then convince, hey, it's worth backing me for this. And some of those people may have no idea why, but they might believe in you. Right? They might say, I know his drive, I know her passion, and I'm willing to give them some money. They might be friends, they might be family, but they also might be kind of fools who are like, I don't know if I'm going to get my money back, but we'll give them some financing. So, but there's a wide range of different types of funders that exist, right? And one area that we typically talk about is impact. And Java is familiar with this from the conversations we've had. But there's a wide spectrum, right? On this side, we have what we call finance first. And that's typically folks who are concerned more on the finance piece, right? And it's later stage businesses that are larger. And on the other side, we have what's called impact first. Who knows what I mean when I say impact? Well, does everyone know what I mean when I talk about impact? Good. So essentially what it means, and we'll break this down like this, that previous slide, this is a larger version of that. And I know this is a bit hard to read. But on this side, we essentially have impact, and on that side, we have financing. So we have finance. And essentially what that means from an impact perspective is you have people who are willing to give you money because they care about the results you will achieve, right? So they might say, look, I want you to be able to go out and give energy to 100,000 people. I want you to go out and I want you to make sure 50,000 women who did not have access to pads can get access to pads. I want you to go out and make sure 500,000 smallholder farmers increase their incomes by 50%, right? And they don't really care if they get their money back. What they care about is what do you do with that money and how does it impact a certain segment of the population. That's what we mean when we talk about impact. And that's essentially grant funding, right? So folks like USAID, for example, will give out grants. They're not expecting you to give them the money back. All they want to see is there are certain results you need to achieve, right? Are people getting access to clean water? Like a whole host of different things. And that often depends on what the priorities of the funders are. So that's on the impact side. And we'll get to that in a little bit because people tend to think that capital is free. It's certainly not, but we can talk about that a bit later. On this side, you have finance first, right? Those are people who say, I don't really care what you do. As long as you repay me my money along with interest, that is all I care about, right? If you go to a bank with a loan, they're not saying to you as part of your loan application, how many people will get energy from this. It's, what are your cash flows? Can you repay me in the defined time we agreed to? And can you give me my interest on top, right? That's on the finance side. And then in the middle, you have a whole host of different types of people that are on that spectrum, who might say, I'm willing to take a bit less of a financial return, right? Banks here are lending at, 20, 25, 30%. Who might say, I'm willing to take a lower return on my money in order to see that impact, right? I want to see you get 10,000 people access to energy. And in return, I don't want to have as much back for me, right? That might be debt, equity. Who knows what I mean when I say equity? Does everyone know? Everyone knows what I'm talking about when I say equity. All right, perfect. So there's a whole spectrum. And this middle is what we'll mostly be talking about today. Because that's where we're talking about kind of preparing for investment. So just keep that spectrum in mind as we're talking about the different types of funders that are available and in the market.